I know these streets, as crammed with dream as a clock with time. Yellow groundsel through the broken flags grows into the mouths of children. Even the stone ages. The blinds of the Jewish butcher's shop are drawn, an old man dies. His brain is full of curious dreams of histories and of old men's deaths. Hours elude the wheeling hands, but the ratchet locks return. Light gathers in deserted streets, dawn-light loose as yellow silk. In the grain-littered yards of the distilleries, shadows of birds are born. Though vagrants waken in familiar streets, and still the demented laugh in zones within the hospital, children learn the early truths menaced by light upon the wall and feverish coughing from another room. They stir in an uneasy sleep. Somewhere a violin, insomniac, speaks deep into the night. This morning in the Jewish quarter and beyond, merchants are abroad. The old invent their lives again, co-terminal in shuttered rooms. Unidentifiable cries stoop like a willow over the hospital wall into the street I know. So I was very much a child of the inner city. I was brought up in Mary Street in Dublin, you know, at right angles to Nelson's Pillar. I could sort of stick my head out the window and sort of see Nelson's Pillar up the road. So it was as central city as you can get. And it was part of my experience, simply, immediately. But there was also, I mean, you know, if you're writing about living in a city, there's so much other stuff. There are other people's motivations. You can't rely on your own simply to interpret stuff, interpret what's happening around you. Other people are wanting and failing to achieve or actually achieving other things, which might be contradictory to what you want or what you're experiencing or interpreting. Energy of the shut mirror. Inside rooms I've never seen, an old man beats himself at chess. The moon recurs as a white dove in a child's dream. A virgin leaves the glass and, turning the light, retires as the mirror broods on itself. Though the sun burns still through a vacant sky, frost thickens on the gates and the moon grows up in the poplar's shade. A girl waits lonely on the bridge. Can I tell her of remote roads where love, not knowing the shock of loss, has atrophied, and no one sees how, at the desolate junctions, the monuments of the old dead bleed with the green ichors of bronze? Or there are streets icy now where pools contract, where I have heard the ringing footfalls of a child who will remember evenings charged with light, fever of strange games played in the falling of the oblique sun, the private hurt of times and words not uttered yet. And shall I tell the destitute how I have found their misery like the wardrobe of a suicide, where I, the living, recognise only the faded linens, the frayed cloth, the torn letters in an inside pocket, extracts from an unintelligible and unfinished history? Or tell the old of ageing and the inevitable death? With dusk the rain comes, the ice loosens and the expanding locks respond and open. Such time impedes the passage of another fall that drags through lengthening nights into the season of their bitter end. I wrote that, I remember sitting under Clanbrassil Street Bridge on the last day of October 1969, and I didn't publish another poem that wasn't a translation until the early 90s. What I did do for a while after, and while doing that stuff, was Mike Smith, who I had met and I was publishing with, had given me a dual language version of the Sidna Gia, the Willa Sidna, which is a Middle Irish text with, in the early Irish text translation, is a facing translation, a crib, with occasionally ... where they can't understand the original or where there's obviously a corruption. I love the idea of a corrupt text. It was the first time I'd actually encountered it. You know, if you're going to translate this, what would you do with the bits they can't understand? The bits where the very scholarly translator who knows all about these languages is saying, well, I think this might be some such a sort of a flower, but on the other hand, it could be something else, or it might be something totally different yet again. If you're a translator and you're not a linguistic expert, what do you do with this? So I decided I'd play. And I had no idea to start with that this stuff was ever going to be published. I was simply playing. And then in the mid-70s, 76 I think it was, Mike Smith got on to me and he said, in the original of the Irish text it was, you know, prose, 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 poem, prose, 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 poem, prose, poem, prose, prose. So you got the two intermixing, verse and prose. And I had done it in the same way, but I'd only translated bits of it. He put all the prose at the beginning and all the verse at the end, and gave it back to me and said, you know, Brian Coffey, there's this poet in England, would like to publish this. Would you be interested? So I had a look at it and said, geez, that's great. You know, it's really interesting stuff. But it's not finished. So even though I hadn't written poetry in about 7 years, I took it home and I worked on it. It didn't work out that Brian published it, but I finished it nonetheless, and New Writers Press, the press that I founded with Mike, published it. So just read a couple of the lyrics, about, I think 3 of them, from it. And the thing is that it's this really moaning, whingy voice that Flannery O'Brien has great fun with. He's translating the same stuff, and he actually was an expert on the language and on translation from it. He was doing his doctorate on it. But if you ever read the novel Swim to Birds, there's a character Sweeney in it, and this is the Sweeney of this text. But he has him coming into the pub constantly and sort of pulling his clothes around and pushing other people out and sitting down by the fire, you know, not even having a pint. And, you know, I am Sweeney, I am miserable. And it starts off in this classic Irish whinge. So I was trying to do other things with it while keeping the marvellous air of whinge. Frost stands in the air, ice grips the bone, ice holds half the doubled moon. Snow is coldest before dawn. Nothing delays my love decay of crimson cloth. On bleak plateaus, snow and the wind undressed me long ago. Cruel sempstress bar confounds seam and suture, sows my skin with wood. Sweeney possessed is Sweeney dispossessed of glib and dazzling wife. Do not therefore distress yourself, who once were subject of my sad distraction. With you, good love, I harvest tares. You and the thorn still mortify proud flesh. For a down bed I am abandoned and unanswered. The falcon does not brood upon such mutes. Chanting I will stoop and bind upon a field of air. Brambles cast sly nets of wood. The air is thorned with frost. Before dawn always wind is sharpest. Sweeney has gone to, he's a king, he's gone to take part in a battle. He's got in bad with a monk before that. The monk puts a curse on him. During the course of the battle, with the fog of war, as they call it now, perhaps, he goes mad and turns into a bird. And the monk has also said that he'll be killed by a spear, by a sharp point. And one of the things that struck me throughout reading the Irish was how all the time, sort of in anticipation of this sharp point of the spear that's going to kill him, he's being penetrated by the thorns of various plants that are going through him. But also it seems as though the weather goes through him, the coldness is constantly penetrating him. I occupy an alien woods, an old retreat. In my familiar square of trees, shrewd centre of such intimate quincunx am I, who still have awoken plovers on settling plangency. Secure amidst a lasting drift of leaves, I graze on mast and sorrel. Hazards are these. Shy doves agog in upper branches, cormorant's disturbance. Where herons call, cold waters move, my soft co-occupant of woods. And it's a sign of how loosely I was handling my original, that you have the line, shrewd centre of such intimate quincunx am I. A quincunx is like you get on a 5 of diamonds in a card deck. You know the way you've got the 5 diamonds, 4 corners and 1 in the middle. That's a quincunx, that's what it's called. And there's the 17th century English prose writer, Sir Thomas Browne, a marvellous writer. He has a thing about the Garden of Cyrus, a classical Greek garden, and it's a little piece of sort of fantasy almost, although he doesn't acknowledge it as such. And he sees it all as being planted in quincunxes. And I have Sweeney talking about this. I thought it was funny.